Other news we're following, police have made an arrest in a brutal and random attack in Queens.
Yeah, the startling moment was caught on camera. Police say Enrique Feliz Jr. walked up to a 9-year-old girl, and look at that. He punched her square in the face. And then when an off-duty officer rushed over to help, the officer ended up with a severe injury himself.
So obviously I had to freeze frame the video right there because obviously this is an incredibly brutal attack against a 9-year-old girl in Queens, New York, which is in New York City, by the way. But I do want to make one quick correction of the local news, even though it doesn't really matter, but we're all about accuracy here, is that if you go to the link in the description of this video under where it says sources and watch it through yourself, you will know that this is not a punch caught on camera. The man did rear back for a haymaker, but this was a slap across this girl's face that ended up knocking her to the ground. And the suspect in this particular case is a man called Enrique Feliz Jr. I don't know his immigration status. I've been trying to ascertain that at this moment in time. But yeah, this is one of the most vicious crimes right here. And by the way, it's about to get significantly worse as we go throughout the course of this story. But of course, it's New York City, so I fully expect this man to get a nice slap on the wrist, a slap that is much softer than the one he laid across the face of that 9-year-old girl, because again, criminals in this city are innocent Baba Angel Aladdins, and honestly, he only smacked the crap out of that girl in order to feed his starving family, according to the progressive Democrats that run this city. Now, we're going to get into this, we are going to break this down, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So a couple of things. Obviously, I've already told you that this man's name is Enrique Feliz Jr. You know that this man is Latino. You know that this takes place in New York City. And since I'm half Latino and I am in New York City, therefore, the rules of collective guilt that some of my dumber audience members often associate whenever I highlight an individual apply to me. So I just want to say I am sorry to everybody out there in the audience that the collective guilt within me smacked this little girl. Now, obviously, that's ridiculous. I'm using this to demonstrate the ridiculousness of this, but if you can believe it, this guy actually acted even more insane when he was confronted by an off-duty officer post this slap. However, I also want to highlight the fact that these two other girls that are sitting down right there didn't even flinch after they saw their friend get smacked across the face with what can only be described as a haymaker slap, even though that's an insanely vicious crime to just occur in the middle of New York City in broad daylight, again, when children are at play. So yeah, I hope the book gets thrown at this guy, but you guys need to know the full extent of his criminality on this particular day before I tell you what needs to happen to this individual.
This video is upsetting. The day before Mother's Day, a 9-year-old girl standing with her mom on the corner of Central Avenue and 67th Place in Glendale, Queens. A man approaches her, asks her name, and then hits her in the face, knocking the young child onto the ground.
So according to this local news report, this actually occurred the day before Mother's Day, and this child is actually near her mother, although I don't know which individual in this particular frame is in fact the mother, but you could see the complete and utter shock by the people that are surrounding this particular area, and apparently this guy walked up to her, asked her what her name was, and then reared back and slapped her, which is just insane behavior, and I would be shocked if this guy did not have a lengthy criminal history. In fact, I almost expect the city of New York to just release somebody like this over and over again repeatedly to talk about mental health, how we have to arrest poverty, but in reality, we need to arrest this guy right here. We need to get him off the streets. This is absolutely sick and disgusting behavior, and believe me, I am well aware of the fact that nobody likes little kids, nobody wants to hear from little kids. Quiet your little kids, but this is not the way. This is not the proper way. And yes, I'm kind of joking a little bit because if I don't tell jokes about this particular case, I'm going to get really angry, and I don't want to say something that's going to end up costing me my YouTube channel, because this guy definitely deserves the worst of the worst for not only this crime, but the crime he then went on to commit against an officer who tried to arrest him, which again just shows how animalistic this guy actually is. But again, a little girl, the most defenseless in our society, lures her in by asking her what her name is, and then cracks her across the face as if that's appropriate. What the hell is wrong with this guy? He definitely needs to be sent to jail, but of course, it's New York City, so he might be out on the streets right now. He might be smacking up little girls at this very moment with the rubber stamp of approval from one of our dumbass district attorneys.
According to the Queens DA, the attack left the girl bleeding from her lip and arm and even made some of her teeth loose. The violence, though, didn't end there.
And a sergeant who was off duty at the time did what good Samaritans do, but also did what good police officers do, is he followed the person, he approached him.
The suspect, 31-year-old Feliz Enrique, then proceeded to bite Officer Sebastian Hajder on the knee, the hand, and then the tip of his finger, bitten clean off, and doctors were unable to reattach it. The suspect was arrested and charged with multiple counts of assault, harassment, and endangering the welfare of a child.
So you heard right there the extent of the damage against the little girl. She had some of her teeth loosened. Obviously, she had a busted lip. She was bleeding from her arm from the fall. And of course, she's completely stunned and probably traumatized for years based on the fact that an adult male attacked her for no reason. But of course, the violence continued when you have the off-duty officer trying to intervene in this particular case. And by the way, I decided to completely black out the screen when they showed the blurred image of his finger that was bit off, but this just goes to show you how animalistic this individual was in this particular crime. And again, we're going to hear a little bit later about his criminal history, but it will not shock you to any extent that this guy has that criminal history. And of course, he was let go by New York state laws, which we will get into in just a little bit. But I do want to point out something else related to this, because I was given a lot of heat to the district attorneys in the city of New York, and all of that is 100% deserved. But that being said, the worst two district attorneys by far and away in the city of New York are District Attorney Alvin Bragg and, of course, the Bronx District Attorney. Bragg is for Manhattan, and it's maybe a tie between the Brooklyn and the Queens one. I'm not really sure, but they're nowhere near as bad as the other two, so we might actually see some consequences for this particular criminal. But make no mistake about it, he has already received the soft on crime treatment from the statewide justice system, who of course is now going out of their way to release people early due to the fact that Governor Kathy Hochul has alienated prison guards to such an extent that they went on strike, and then she fired about 2,000 of them post the strike, thus incentivizing more early releases.
Enrique was on parole after spending 7 years in prison for attempted murder.
Yeah, that's right. So Felix Jr. was actually convicted of attempted murder, and unsurprisingly, it seems like the system hadn't rehabilitated him. And of course, he was given parole 7 years into an 129-month sentence, which, by the way, for those of you counting at home, is of course 10 years and 9 months. So that is actually within the normal range of what you would serve. However, I do want to point out that typically, if you get paroled within the short period of time, which is about half to 2/3 of your sentence, like you would see in this particular case, then usually that's based on the fact that you have presented good behavior while you were incarcerated. And while I couldn't find the specific details of the attempted murder case against Felix Jr., one of the things that I did find was that he was actually convicted of an additional crime, which was an assault on a prison guard while he was incarcerated, which normally would mean that you would serve out more than your sentence because you've shown yourself not only to be violent outside when you got convicted in the first place, but inside the walls of the prison as well. Now, in this particular assault on a corrections officer, he reportedly, and by the way, he pled guilty to this, so he was convicted of this as well, punched a corrections officer in the face, threw a liquid on him, possibly it was urine, we don't know at this moment in time because it's not clarified in the article, and of course threatened to kill that corrections officer. Now, he was offered by the Southern District of New York a sweetheart plea deal where his charges were dropped down to a misdemeanor, and of course the prosecutors expected him to get a 12-month sentence attached to that, which he did get technically. However, that was attached to his current sentence and it was allowed to be served concurrently. So what ultimately ended up happening was that he received no consequences for that violent behavior while he was in prison, and again, he was still able to be paroled at what presumably was his earliest parole date. This is what they've allowed to go on in New York State prisons. And of course, when you let out somebody who's violent, who's an attempted murderer, who attacks people without provocation, you can't be surprised that when he gets on the outside, he ends up proving to be violent, he ends up proving to be an attempted murderer, and he ends up attacking people, in this case, a little girl, without provocation.
The 9-year-old girl is back home and doing okay, but officials say her family is understandably distraught. And community members we spoke to also say they are disturbed.
For a grown man to strike a little girl like that's a little outrageous. That's a little outrageous. And to bite off a cop finger.
The DA says after the attack, Felice Enrique told officials, quote, "This isn't the first time it's happened. I beat up her father. Yeah, I punched her." He remains in custody and is being evaluated to see if he is mentally fit for trial as the investigation continues into why these deeply distressing acts of violence happened in the first place.
I know a lot of people like to write this in my comments. It is never more true than it is right here, which is compassion for the criminal is, of course, an attack on the victims. And this 9-year-old girl is proof positive of that. Again, the local news segment is in the description of this video. If you want to see the brutality of this, go click the link. Observe it for yourself. Understand that this is somebody that we could have kept in for longer. His behavior warranted that. However, they decided that they were going to let him out anyway, even though, again, he showed himself to be violent while he was in prison. They decided that they were going to offer him a sweetheart plea deal while incarcerated anyway, even though he was already there on, of course, an attempted murder. It's absurd. It's insane. And hopefully he serves some serious consequences for this, but I don't expect it. And even if he gets a proper sentence, I expect the parole board to give him another slap on the wrist because, oh my God, innocent Baba Angel Aladdin didn't do nothing wrong. And what was he supposed to do other than smack this girl in order to feed his starving family? But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a man who assaulted a 9-year-old and then, of course, bit somebody's finger off. Till next time.